This program is sponsored in part by the National Catholic Society of Foresters. Hello and welcome to Looking at Social Justice. I'm Jim Grant, your host, and it's a pleasure for me to be interviewing today someone that I have had on programs 15 years ago in another life at KNXT with another series of programs, but similar in that I just went to Sunnyside High School on the 13th of May and was treated to a program sponsored by the Civic Education Center, the Democracy School Program Showcase. And what I did see is the work of Dr. John Minkler and Dr. Stephen Morris and the group that is the committee that works on all this to bring together a presentation that instilled so much joy in what is education's possibilities here in the Valley. It was such a great program that I immediately thought John should come on today, Dr. John Minkler, and introduce himself and the Civic Education Center that has been his group that he's working with at the moment. And why don't we begin there, John? Catch us up with what is this wonderful Civic Education Center that leads us into your evening that I am still celebrating and just so happy for what those kids showed us thanks to your leadership with Steve and your committee.
Well, thank you for inviting me to share this. I retired from a career in social studies and civic education, but then I was called back. There was a Department of Education task force report that said that we have a real crisis in civic education today, and young people are not coming through the K-12 system with a strong sense of what the principles of democracy are, what the values are that our country stands for, and what their responsibilities are as citizens. So it called for some dramatic changes in the way we do civic education K through 12 in the public schools. So a group of people were invited to come together with the leadership of Judge Don Franson and Deborah Nonkeville from the Business Council and Mike Wilhelm from the Bar Association, and some other folks came together and started meeting to talk about how can we make a difference in revitalizing civic education. They called me in because of my past experience.
Wow.
And they asked what could we do in Fresno County to implement some of these strategies. And the first school that we started working with 4 years ago was CART. Yep. And they have been working on this for 4 years. The idea is fairly simple. Each group or class identifies a problem that they think is an important concern of young people. Then they do research. And in the case of CART, we have attorneys who go in. It's the law lab. The attorneys come in, meet with the students, and help them research the issue that they're concerned about. We now work with elementary, middle school, and high schools in the Valley, and our organization brings community experts into the classroom from nonprofits, from government agencies, from the university, to help the students understand. And the students choose things like suicide prevention. They're concerned. Even 8th grade students are concerned about why are there so many teen suicides and adult suicides? What can we learn? What do we need to know to protect ourselves from that? So that's how it got started, was creating opportunities to train teachers in the public schools to not only teach U.S. history, and so we work with, in the curriculum it says 5th grade, 8th grade, and 11th grade is U.S. history. So we're starting with that. working with the teachers to show that not only do you give lectures and have the kids read the textbook, but you give them an opportunity to identify a real problem and go through this process, which comes up with a civic service project, and the students connect with the community and actually provide a service. It empowers them to feel like they can make a difference, that they can be citizens even though they're not able to vote. They can actually make changes and improve the community.
So from what I saw the other night, on the 13th, we had Fresno Unified represented, Sanger Unified, and Fowler Unified, and CART. Are those the unified school districts that are really part of your project?
Right. And for the last 3 years, they've been part of the project.
And you've got upwards of 1,200 students.
Right.
Does the school then decide they're going to opt in on your proposal, like you are an option, like an elective?
It happens in different ways. Sometimes a principal will reach out to us. Sometimes teachers will reach out to us, or we'll make presentations to social studies teachers, and some of them will say, I want to do that. So it happens in different ways. But those 3 districts have been firmly committed over the last 3 years. We're now reaching out to other districts, and we're hoping to double the program within 2 years.
Could you introduce us just a little bit to your staff? Because on the brochure, we get to see that there's a board of directors, but then there's the staff. You want to just walk us through some of the major people that are working with you, because you are, I think, the president, but then you've got Stephen Morris as your CEO and some other. Who are some of these other people that are motivators with you, that are making this all happen?
Well, last summer we realized we were doubling the program and we needed another person to come in and go out and visit the classes and work with the teachers and train teachers. And I was fortunate to be able to invite Steve Morris, who I've worked with for over 15 years. He's a former principal in Fresno Unified. He's a former teacher. He just got his doctorate at Fresno State. And he's highly qualified to do this work. And he's very committed to working with young people as far as character and civic education and empowering them to solve real problems, looking at really difficult problems like social justice and racism. And so Steve provides a perspective that is really helpful to these young people.
It was so great the other night seeing both of you, how would I say, propelling the program and introducing and being part of the sharing of your passion, and to see it exemplified in the students, because it was a student event.
Right.
Totally. And it became very clear it was the students that were the base of energy and the leaders. That's not an easy thing to accomplish.
No, and I'm glad you brought that up, because it's one of the fundamental differences between the traditional social studies education, where the teachers are trained that you now have the wisdom, it's in the books, and you've been trained, you have a credential, and you've got to get this information across to the students. And there's a place for that. But there's no sense that the students can actually create their own insights and bring their own knowledge and life experience to a problem to be solved. That's not taught in the teacher education program. So, and some teachers are resistant to that. They want to be the authority, and they don't want to have the students coming up with proposals and ideas. So it takes some training of the teachers. Most teachers are receptive to it. Most teachers see that students are going to be are much more likely to be active citizens and responsible problem solvers if they have the experience. And we call it guided practice. You teach math and language, and you guide the students to practice the skills. We don't do that with with democracy. We don't have guided practice with democracy, except for a few students who might get into student government, and that's a great experience for them. But our premise is that all students should have the opportunity to participate in democratic problem solving.
You know, when I went, I had really no clear idea of what I would be treated to, except that I knew I'd see you and Steve, and that in 2 days later, today, the 15th of May, we'd be interviewing you. But boy, what a treat. When I go there, I start seeing, oh, we're going to see elementary schools perform, share, but collaboratively. No one student representative of a project. It's totally a team approach. Then I'm going to see middle schools. I'm going to see CART, which was exciting because it brought me back 20 years when Josh was in that same law and policy program at CART when he was at Edison. It was phenomenal, John, to be treated to these presentations by these kids. And I got to say, let's talk about the elementary schools and what you really think you could have been so pleased at seeing, and then I'll tell you the one that stood out for me, because I'm still excited about one in particular of the elementary. They were all awesome, but some are more awesome. John, tell us about the elementary school effort and where that's gone in the 4 years.
Okay. So really, this is the first year we've included the 5th grade.
There you are.
So every one we have, I think, 6 5th grade classes this year, and every one of them it's the first time. And it's so fascinating to see what they consider to be a real problem. There was a class that was concerned about stray animals and the fact that in the animal shelters, thousands of dogs and cats are euthanized because there just aren't enough people to adopt them. And the kids were really upset about that, and they decided that was going to be their project. And so they did their research, and they did a project that ended up encouraging spaying and neutering and being a responsible pet owner. There was a group that was talking about poverty and nutrition, and why is it that it's so hard to get fresh fruits and vegetables in low income areas. Well, that's a really complicated problem. 5th graders can't solve that, but I was able to bring in someone from the Fresno County Office of Education who has a nutrition program for elementary schools, and they help the students set up a farmer's market right at their school. So these kids have, for 4 Wednesdays in a row, they got fresh produce from local farms. They sold that to parents of the students in the school and parents in the neighborhood. The kids had to learn how to run a business, how to run a farmer's market. They were delighted. They had to make all of the signs and all the information, and they learned about how it is possible to bring fresh produce from local farmers into a low-income community.
It was amazing. The one that I can't not mention was the daily Fresno Unified School, because they were like little Pope Francises. They were all committed to doing what they could to stop overconsumption. And it was so urgent, their plea, and so practical, and bringing up instances of where this is needing to be addressed. And there's alternatives to what we're doing. It was inspiring. And then to think, these are 5th graders. I mean, this is completely amazing to me and inspiring to think what they'll be doing with their lives if they're thinking like this at 5th grade. It's awesome.
Well, it's also important for us adults to be listening to the young people. So here we have 5th graders telling us, if we continue to consume the way we're consuming now, and they distinguished between renewable and non-renewable resources, that the pollution, it has long-term effects, the things that we buy. We really need to question, do we need everything that we buy? Might we take some things into consideration and be more deliberate about. I mean, we need to listen to the young people. They're going to be inheriting the earth as we have left it for them, and they can see that there are some problems out there. I mean, they can see that climate change is happening. They can see that problems aren't being solved. So we need to be listening to these young people and to the ideas that they're putting forward.
I listened. I took copious notes. It was inspiring, just to see their passion and their authentic. They were so authentic.
Right.
You couldn't script it, because then they'd be fumbling through it. It was them, and it was so sweet. So that was the elementary.
Could I mention one topic that came up both in an elementary school and a middle school, Heaton Elementary and Turonis Middle School? When we asked the students, what are you concerned about? They said, too much disrespect.
Oh, yeah.
Bullying, fighting. I don't feel safe. I feel like people are going to, if I say something the wrong way, people are going to use it against me. At the middle school, they're concerned about social media, and if someone posts something, even if it's not true, it could cause a fight the next day. And so they were saying, we need to know how to figure out what to do about that. And we don't feel safe here. We feel stressed. And the teachers were saying, yeah, they're not paying attention. Well, no, they're not paying attention if they've got that much stress and they're not feeling safe. So it was fascinating, but both of those schools, to go through a process, we were able to bring in some adults who could suggest, here's why this is happening. Here are some things some skills that you could learn, some conflict resolution skills, some communication skills. And the students really responded. And they decided in each of those two schools that they're going to start a club. They're going to, next year, they're going to have students go through the training. And fortunately, Fresno Unified has a conflict resolution, restorative practices consultant, Christina Casenario, who was able to come out and talk to these students. Nice. Once we saw how effective that was, we set up two whole days of training for those youth leaders from those schools to meet with her and learn some of these skills. They're building something, or painting something called a peace bridge.
Oh yeah,
on
their
bridge. School grounds. So, and it's a process that you go through if you're in conflict with another student. You go through the steps on the peace. So that is powerful. If the kids are able to articulate a deep concern, especially something that affects their lives so much as constant stress from bullying and fights around them, they can't concentrate on school, they don't feel good, and if we're able to guide them to become trainers of other students, that's a powerful outcome.
It really, really was. Middle schools, is there something you want to tell us about that second level? These kids are a little older, so how long have we been working with them, and what more do you want to say about middle school?
So we've been working for 3 years with middle school students, and we're amazed at how much they're also concerned about mental health. One of the students at Quail Lake Environmental Academy, they had 2 8th grade classes. One 8th grade class was dealing with childhood trauma. Yep. And the other was dealing with domestic violence. Who would have guessed that 8th graders are concerned about those kind of things? And so what we are able to do is bring in experts from the community who can talk to them. Artie Padilla, for instance, who works with Every Neighborhood Partnership, but he's also the coordinator of a coalition on trauma and what organizations can do to be sensitive to trauma-informed services for young people. And so he was able to come out and talk to these students, and they ended up deciding that they felt like students who've experienced trauma need to have some resources, some books that they can read and keep. And so they ended up deciding for their service project, they did a book drive, and they asked all the students in the school to pick a book or two that was really meaningful to them, that made them feel good about life and who they are. And so there were 850 of those specially chosen books that was given to the Reading Heart Foundation that was started by that elementary school young lady from West Fresno. Fantastic. So we're able to channel that concern. They learn the information, they learn about why it's important and what can be done about it, and then they find some meaningful way to participate in a service project that will help solve that problem.
The high school level, the one I got to see was from CART. Is it only CART participating in that, or do other high schools, are they part of the?
We're hoping to be in Fowler High School and Sunnyside High School. We're hoping to get into other high schools in the next year. Our goal is that students should be experiencing this at least once in elementary school, at least once in middle school, and at least once in high school. And the research shows, and our conviction is, if students have this experience in elementary, middle, and high school, by the time they're doing their civic service project in high school, they're going to be really well thought out. I mean, they're going to be addressing climate change and war and peace, and racial justice and poverty. You may not think that students can come up with those kinds of solutions, but we've seen what they can do at 5th grade. We can see what they do at 8th grade, what the CART students are doing. What if they had the series of opportunities?
Speaking of the CART program, I do want to give a little shout out to CART, because it wound up that I already have a message from one of the young ladies on that team who already is going to be taking your place in that seat and expanding on their project and perhaps other things that they're doing at CART. Did you want to say anything about how it's worked out with this wonderful program with CART over the years?
Well, the CART program is in the law lab, and so the focus is on policy change and the law. And so we've been fortunate that the attorney
Moira?
No, Mike Wilhelm. Pardon me. Mike Wilhelm has been able to provide 2 attorneys for each of the groups at CART in the process of doing the research. Sheesh. And then they come up with, after they've done their analysis, they come up with a proposed policy change. Let me give an example. Last year, there was a group that was worried about gang prevention, and they were concerned there were so many gangs around Fresno and so forth. So they did the research. They found out that Boys and Girls Club had an excellent gang prevention program, and they met with the director of the Boys and Girls Club and said, what could we do to help? And the director said, it would help us in our fundraising if we could be designated as a certified gang prevention program by the county supervisors in Fresno County. So they went to the county supervisor, and they drafted a law or a bill for the county supervisors. They lobbied for it. They got community partners to support them. They lobbied for it, and then they were able to get that passed. So now the Boys and Girls Club is a certified gang prevention program, and it helps them with their fundraising. So those boys and girls on that team feel like they made a difference.
Oh, boy, they did. Especially dealing with the Board of Supervisors. This is a challenge for anybody to wind up having a cause that you wish would be heard and acted upon positively. Just did a show the other day with SEIU 2015, trying to get more money, obviously, for our home care workers. It's an uphill battle because it's the Board of Supervisors, they've got a lot on their plate, but that these high school kids crafted a bill and they prevailed, and because of that, Boys and Girls Club gets funded because now they're on the roster of the gang prevention team.
Right.
This is like amazing, John. Just great. We've got about 2 more minutes. So what haven't we been able to even scratch the surface on that you'd want to make sure in our show we didn't forget to mention that?
Well, I think we're all concerned about our democracy, and we need to be preparing young people to understand that every generation has to renew their commitment to the principles that our country was founded on. There's a quote from Alexander Hamilton: "The sense of the community shall govern." The sense of the community. In the early days of our country, they had town meetings. They brought people together and they talked about what are the problems we're facing and what are we going to do about it. That was the sense of the community. That's the essence of democracy, is citizens coming together, identifying what needs to be done, and then figuring out how are we going to deal with it. We've lost that, and we now have representatives, and we're all disappointed because the representatives in faraway places are not solving our problems. But if democracy is going to be renewed, we're going to have to find ways to come together as citizens and look at what's going on, what needs to be done in our community, and what are we going to do about it. And we need to teach the next generation how to do that. And we know how to do that. We know how to invite students to identify problems they care about, and we know how to guide them to do the research, and we know how to guide them to implement their civic service projects. It's just that we aren't implementing that. So our goal, our mission of the Civic Education Center is to institutionalize that. So all students have that experience and that opportunity. So the next generation will be prepared for addressing the challenges that they face.
I want to thank you, John, for this first program that we're doing with this project of yours, with many others. And I'll close on one thought that I was so inspired the other evening with what I saw in that hour-and-a-half showcase. It almost made me forget the need we have for this because of what's going on in the country at the moment. And it's been a long moment. We are losing not only a sense of community and opportunity, we are also losing a sense of decency, a sense of civility. We are in a major moment, and I am so encouraged by what you're doing. Thank you so much, John.
All right, thank you.